Good evening. I'm glad to be doing tonight's conversation with, I'm not saying this because I'm trying to flatter you. I truly and sincerely consider you one of the most interesting and fascinating people in our community, and that I've had the pleasure of getting to know. Dr. Dower, as I told him a few minutes ago, has more letters after his name than anyone, but really he's a fascinating individual because he has a tremendous depth and a wealth of information on so many different topics. So, there's always people that are experts in medicine or experts in history or experts in other topics. But here's a person that you talk to him and he just goes and there's like a wealth of information on a variety of topics. So I'm going to try and keep you focused tonight on the historical aspect of the Hay Internment Camp. Although when I was talking to my wife, who also has gotten the pleasure of getting to know Dr. Dower, and we spent some time with him, and she's like, talk about his medical inventions, talk about Corona. I said, listen, we marketed, we're talking about history tonight. You could talk about so many different things, but we're going to stay focused on what's really of interest for tonight and the fascinating historical. It's really a small part of the story of the Holocaust and World War II. And for most of us Jews, that when we hear about World War II and the Holocaust, we are focused on the concentration camps. We're focused on the concentration camps. We're focused on all the other, what's what I'm looking for? The tragedies and the calamities of the Holocaust. And there's really many other very important and interesting things that happened at the same time as World War II that are not taught perhaps in our schools, that are not focused on in the Jewish community, but have really impacted the world. And the Jewish community of Australia today, to a large extent, is a direct result of the story that we're going to be talking about tonight. So I'm very excited to be introducing someone that I'm happy to be able to call a friend, someone that I'm getting to know on a very close, very interesting to get to know and to spend time with and to talk with, Dr. Eddie Dower, and his wife Joan that's watching. She's hiding behind a different screen, but both of you together are fascinating people. Before we even introduce you and start the conversation, I do want to say that one of the many things that Dr. Dower has done is to produce a fascinating book on the topic we're going to be talking about tonight. And it comes in a very beautiful slipcase. Let me put it back in. I don't know if you can see my screen because I'm screen sharing. I'm doing a virtual background. Let me take out my virtual background just for a second. You can see the green screen hiding behind me. But just for a second, this book in the beautiful slipcase, I'm sure we're going to see a lot of the pictures and all that. Highly, highly well done, very professionally done. I spent like 45 minutes tonight with my kids on the couch going through this book. No, I actually even sent Dr. Dower a picture. Going through the book with my kids. It is very, very professionally done, glossy. It's really more of like a picture book than almost, it's a history book, but every picture, every different incident going back through over 100 years of history, 150 years of history. And Dr. Dower normally sells his book for $75, but tonight he's donating all of these books to Chabad. Any books that are sold tonight, we're going to be offering a special $60 discount. If you just message me, you can message me right here on Facebook or on the website or email me. I'm going to send out a link to this after tonight as well with the recording of the talk tonight. All the money goes straight to Chabad. Dr. Dower is donating the books to Chabad, and I want to thank him for that. Okay, that was my no introduction. Doctor, that was without an introduction.
Okay.
If you don't mind, but for 1 minute, people like to know who they're talking to. If you could, like in 1 minute, Dr. Dower is also very humble. I asked him to give us an introduction before. He said, I'm just a school teacher. So you're a very humble school teacher. If you don't mind for 1 minute giving us a brief, just a short context of who you are, your life story.
Well, thank you very much, Rabbi, for inviting me tonight. Well, I wouldn't be anything without my wife, Joanne, who's on here also. And we wrote this book together. And my background is electrical engineering as an undergraduate, and I went to medical school at the University of Miami. After that, I did a radiology residency. and fellowship. Here's Joanne coming to say hello. Come join us, Joanne.
Oh, there you go.
There you are. Come over a little bit more.
A cameo appearance. A cameo appearance is always good.
Here. And so I'm board certified in diagnostic radiology as a physician, and I've been director of radiology at Florida Medical Center in Lauderdale Lakes since 1979. And currently then I went back to school and got my master's degree in biomedical engineering. I've been full-time at the University of Miami since 2001. So my primary appointment is in biomedical engineering, and I do tissue engineering and artificial organ design, and run the scanning electron microscopy laboratory, and also do radiation physics and medical physics. Joanne went back to school and got her doctorate in nursing, and she's also on the faculty at the School of Nursing. So I like to say that my wife and I are both school teachers. That's what we do for a living. So what I want to do is talk to you about the Hay Internment Camp. And it's interesting about the Hay Internment Camp is...
Let me interrupt you for 1 second, if you don't mind. First of all, someone asked the name of the book. The name of the book is Australian History, 1901 to 2001. And I'm going to post a picture of it on Facebook in a second, picture of the book. But maybe we should ask if anyone's even heard of the Hay Internment Camp. I know I haven't before tonight. Well, before... Okay, go for it. We'll see if we get any comments, if people have heard about it.
On my, I have
you have it right there on the screen. Perfect. Look at that.
the PowerPoint slides on. So can they see these on Facebook?
Yes. On Facebook, what we're seeing is your screen. Your screen share.
Okay. So here is the book that Joanne and I wrote, and we wrote it with our co-author friend from Australia, John Pettit. And we wrote the history of Australia seen through banknotes, which was basically our collection of banknotes. And part of it is a very interesting section on the Hay Internment Camp. Now, so what the United States did to the Japanese Americans in right after Pearl Harbor, they put them in internment camps. That's the same thing the British did right after the fall of Dunkirk. We're going to talk about that. And very few people know that the Australians actually built internment camps for the Jewish citizens. So here's the book. And as the rabbi said, we are donating them to the Chabad House. And if you want a copy of the book, you can contact the rabbi, and as many as he can sell, we'll donate, and the money goes 100% to the Chabad House. So we start the story off in 1937 with the HMT Dunera. HMT stands for Hired Military Transport. This was originally a passenger ship that was built in 1937. Then with the breakout of World War II in 1939, the British converted it into a troop ship for carrying troops. Originally it would carry 1,157 troops, and it had a crew of 290. So what happened? Okay, so it starts off with Kristallnacht. November 9th and 10th, 1938 in Germany and parts of Austria and other cities. It wasn't just in one city. Kristallnacht is the night of broken glass, where the first major violence against the Jewish shops and citizens occurred. There were 91 Jews that were killed during those 2 days. It was the first really outward manifestation of violence against the Jews without any protection or support from the police. So it was at that time, shortly thereafter, that it was probably getting close to the end when people could still leave Nazi Germany. And a lot of the Jews from Germany, Austria, and even from Italy migrated over to England. And there were about 7,000 of them came over that were fleeing Nazi Germany. Everything was pretty good. They were considered, basically permanent residents fleeing Hitler. But it all changed in Dunkirk. Dunkirk is when, from France, they were able to repatriate all the troops across the border to the English Channel to England, and the Nazi troops were massing over there. And the British were afraid there's going to be an invasion of Great Britain. And all of a sudden, those 7,000 Jewish refugees that came in 1938, 1939, they're suspect. They might be an agent for Hitler. So they said, let's move them out. Let's get them out of England just in case, because we don't know if they're Nazi saboteurs or spies. Now, you're talking about the people that were the elite of the German society. You were professors, you were banknote engravers, you were artists. Franz Stempel was one. He was the coach that ultimately was the coach for Roger Bannister, who was the first one to run the 4-minute mile in 1954. And he actually had been in the Berlin Olympics in 1936, representing Germany in the javelin flow. Wolf Klopek, he invented synthetic camphor. Lots of artists, artisans, musicians, professors. The elite of the German Jews came over. So they said, let's get rid of these 7,000 people. So they sent a lot of them over to Canada for kind of safekeeping. And they put some in the Isle of Man. But then on July 10th, 1940, they said, let's make an agreement with the Australian government and have an internment camp in Australia. So they put 2,542 German Jews on the ship. Actually, there were
German Jews that had escaped from Germany.
Right, but there were only 2,000 were Jewish refugees. There were about 250 German POWs, and there were about 200 Italian POWs, and there were some of very, very close association with the Nazis also. So there are about 2,000 refugees out of the 2,500. And they put them on a troop ship now that was designed for just 1,157 troops. And they added 309 poorly trained guards that were very, very mean to the refugees. So what they did, they left Liverpool, England, on a 57-day voyage to Sydney, Australia. So they left Liverpool, and Liverpool is patrolled now in the waters by the German U-boats, the German submarines. So because these guards were so cruel to the refugees, they went through their luggage, they took anything of value, they ransacked them, and then they put the luggage away. So for the 57-day trip, they were not allowed to have any change of clothes at all. And then they threw all their books into the water. So as soon as they leave Liverpool, lo and behold, there's a German submarine, fires a torpedo at the ship, and it misses. They fire a second one, and it hit the ship, but it was a dud. So then the captain goes, let's surface and see what happens. And they saw some books floating in the water. So the submarine captain sent his divers out to retrieve the books, and lo and behold, they were in German. So the captain said, oh my goodness, thank goodness that the torpedo...
Do you think they said, thank God?
Well, I don't know what they
thank
said.
Goodness.
Maybe they said, thank whatever.
Yeah.
But they said, those must be German prisoners. They must be German prisoners because, look, the books are in German. So because they thought they were German prisoners, then he dove under and left the ship alone. Otherwise, it would have been torpedoed. So here they are on a very cruel voyage. They were only allowed 10 minutes per day up on the deck. The latrines, the outdoor bathrooms, were only on the deck, and you could only use them during the day. You weren't allowed to go up at night. The guards were so cruel that one of the Jewish refugees had to go up in the middle of the night because he had dysentery and he got bayoneted in the abdomen. In fact, during this trip, about 4 or 5 of the internment refugees actually died from the voyage, from dysentery, only 10 minutes out on the deck, no change of clothes for 57 days, barely enough nutrition to keep them alive. So it was very, very rough conditions. So here it is, and that's a picture of the ship as it's going into Sydney Harbor. And they have all the records for this. So this is an example, one of the pages of the passenger manifest. And you can see they're all Jewish names. So I think you can recognize.
We can't read that on the screen, but what
Werner Stahl, Walter Stengel, Theodore Sternberg, Alfred Stern, Victor Rosen, Kurt Rosenberg, all Jewish names. Can you see this picture here?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so there weren't any photos actually on board, but one of the artists on board did a series of sketches. And so the crew itself and the captain were good. It was the guards that were very vicious and nasty and mean. And they mishandled the prisoners. They would beat them. Like I said, they went through their luggage, through all their personal possessions. And this is what's left here. You can see some artist sketches of their voyage. And this is what it looked like as they came into Sydney Harbor. You can see how overloaded the ship was. So can you imagine?
That's an actual picture of the ship?
Picture of it coming in. 57 days at sea. And they come in. Now they take some of the prisoners off, the actual prisoners, take them off in Sydney. And everyone else, then they put on a train to Hay. Hay is a city several hundred miles west of Sydney, in the middle of the outback country. There's nothing around there. It's hard to get to. It doesn't have an airport, but there was a train depot, and it was a 30-hour train ride to take them to their internment camp, where the British wanted them kept during the duration of the war, so they wouldn't be accused of plotting an invasion by Hitler. So during their trip to Hay, even the guards then were very, very nice. In fact, there's a true story about one time the Australian guard on the train gave his rifle to one of the prisoners and said, "Hold it for me while I get a cigarette." That's a true story. So the guards and the prisoners got along very well. And once they landed and got off the ship, then everything was in very nice conditions, and they were able to have a decent living. Ultimately, by the way, there was a series of courts-martial on the guards on the ship, and they were punished, and retribution was made for the harsh conditions. So here's the town of Hay, and like I said, several hundred miles west of Sydney, and they were known
30-hour train ride.
A 30-hour train ride, and they were known for a race course. So here's their race course. And Camp 8 and Camp 7 were the Jewish camps, and Camp 6 was where they put the German prisoners of war and the Italian prisoners of war. So there were several hundred POWs that came on the same ship, but they were segregated in Camp 6 and kept under stricter control, whereas Camp 8 and Camp 7 was for the Jews. Although in one of the camps, Camp 8, the Jews were mixed with some Catholics and Protestants. And by the way, the age of the Jewish refugees, they were as young as 16, and the oldest was 45. So this is now...
Were there men and women in the camp, or only men?
No, only men, and only men aged 16 to 45, but no women. So here is the camps they were building. You can see this is Camp 8 under construction. Camp 7 was all Jews only. In fact, that's the camp that they actually started having kosher meals there, believe it or not. And so they were building it like 3 layers of barbed wire as a regular internment camp. So they were treated very nicely once they got to the camp, but they couldn't leave. They didn't have their freedom. This is building the Hay Camp, 1940. Now, this is in September 1940. And here they were playing handball, but you can still see the 3 layers of barbed wire. And here the prisoners. Yes, go ahead.
My son didn't know what barbed wire was. I was showing him the pictures. He's like, "What's barbed wire?" They're trying to figure out what barbed wire, trying to explain to them.
Yes.
Thank God our kids are growing up in a different world, thank God.
Now, Camp 6 was for the German and Italian prisoners. Several hundred were there. And so here is prisoners marching toward Camp 6, putting them in Camp 6. So here you have, they had an Australian Guard regiment. It's from the 16th Australian Garrison, were the guards at Hay. So they were guarding them, but they were very nice to them. So the main horror was on those, on the ship, the 57-day voyage of the HMT Demerara. So here is on Camp 6, where the Germans were, and here it is under, again, the 3 camps under construction. So because they were well educated and very wealthy, you know, everyone was used to the use of money and coins and to be able to buy things. And there's no currency available in the camp. So this was their first effort at trying to get some money to buy goods at the camp store. They had like a PX or store. And these were the early crude engravings. If you notice the names Stahl and Siebel, right here, you'll see these names. You'll see them again on the banknotes. So here's 2D or 2 pennies, 1 penny, 5 pennies, 3 pennies, 10, 5 shillings. That was like 1/4 of a pound. They were using the British pounds then. So that would be the equivalent of about $1. And so they had their early notes, but they weren't really too well advanced. And then they decided, let's print some more sophisticated notes from Hay. So now these were more professional looking. And that's how Rabbi Falk came into the picture. Rabbi Falk was the assistant rabbi at the Sydney, Australia Great Synagogue. And he joined the Australian Army in 1935 as a chaplain. And so he came in as a rabbi. You can see the Jewish star on his uniform. So they recognized the Jewish star. They were very pro-Jewish in Australia. They weren't anti-Semitic at all at the time. And so Rabbi Falk is assigned to the division of the military that is guarding the camp because of the large number of Jewish internees. They didn't call them prisoners at the time. So because of Rabbi Falk, that's why these copies here survive, because you see the name Stahl, you're going to see this again. This was the envelope given to Rabbi Falk in December 1940 that contained those woodblock notes that I showed you on the earlier page, and also the first series. And here it's canceled Internment Camp 7. And this was a picture also of the bunks at the time in the barracks. So they were doing pretty good, even able to get kosher food. So now what's the main story about Hay Internment Camp? The internees, by the way, were called Dunera boys, the Dunera boys after the HMT Dunera. So that's what they were known as. So here is the need to really make some better currency now. Let's have some better currency. So there were some Austrian banknote engravers and artisans. So they said, let's make some real banknotes. And what we should do is to have them printed in the town newspaper using their printing press and make currency for the camp. So they made these notes and said, the Camp 7 Internment Camp Hay will upon demand pay against this note 2 shillings. And there's that Stahl again. He was the manager. And their serial number, just like regular currency, dated March 1st, 1941. So they're already there like 6 months and they got their currency going. Wow. But the problem here is, even though they said on the back, this note is valid only within the boundaries of Camp 7, Internment Camp Hay, it said on the front, legal Australian currency. So that was the problem. So these notes get pictured from the Hay newspaper. They go to the Sydney newspaper. And they show how you have these Jewish internees there, like 2,000 of them, and 2,500 of them, and they are now making their own banknotes to use in the camp store. So the government agents look at this and they said, you can't do this. It says legal Australian currency because that will confuse the public. So they sent a series of agents over there, and the number they were printed about 9,000 notes total, 3,000 of the 6 pence, 4,000 of the 1 shilling, and 2,000 of the 2 shilling notes. So they sent a series of government agents over there. 5 detectives came over to confiscate all these notes and destroy the plates. They said, you can't have them, they're illegal. So they confiscated all the notes, but a handful were kept hidden by either some of the guards or some of the detainees inside their books, and a few escaped destruction. So today, they are very, very scarce and also very valuable as a collector item. But what makes them special? Okay, first thing you know here is, let's look at the front with the seal. Part of the seal.
Are you able to zoom in on Are you able to zoom in on the
I'm not
dollar
able
bill?
to zoom in,
Oh.
but we have the kangaroo and the emu. The emu looks pretty much like an ostrich. So in the Australian government seal, they have the kangaroo and the emu. Why do they use those two on their seal? Does anybody want to comment or say? Any guesses?
Any guesses? Let's see anyone comments on Facebook. We have a bunch of people watching, by the way. Any comments on why the kangaroo or the?
And the emu, which is like an ostrich, but it's different. It's an emu, E-M-U. Why are those used for the
EMU.
Australian federal seal? Just like we use the eagle.
Well, I'm going to guess that we'll guess that they're more commonly found in Australia. The kangaroo is probably the animal.
Only found in Australia, naturally. So
Oh.
you're correct on that. That's one half of it. So these are only found in Australia as native animals. The kangaroo.
You don't have kangaroo anywhere else in the world?
Not natively. Okay.
Wow.
Now,
That's
the other reason they use them is because neither one.
So Andrea got the right answer as well. Indigenous to the land. Yes.
Yeah.
People are commenting. Yes.
Neither one of those can walk backwards. Have you ever seen a kangaroo walk backwards? Or emu walk backwards? They can't walk backwards. So that symbolized the forward progress of the country when they got its independence from Great Britain in 1901, right after Queen Victoria passed away. So the fact that they can't walk backwards and they're indigenous to Australia showed the forward progress of the country. That's why they made it on the seal. So, and there's a sheep here now. There's a sheep, and on the back there's lots of sheep. Okay, and you notice what's around the outside of the notes.
I'm going to interrupt you for 1 second. I have just discovered my new favoriteest animal.
The emu?
No, the kangaroo.
Kangaroo.
Doesn't go backwards. That's the motto of life.
Yes, only forward. Now,
You
what
inspired me.
to the edge? Tell your son that this is what barbed wire looks like around the edge. Okay?
Yeah.
That's barbed wire. But there are secret messages in these notes. So these notes aren't in demand today from collectors just because there's very few left. It's because of the secret messages. Does anyone see the secret message in the barbed wire?
It'd probably be hard for them to see it on the Facebook. Anyone see the secret message in the barbed wire? Let's see if anyone comments and can see it.
Barbed wire here. There's barbed wire here. You can't see it. It's too
small to see it. I'm looking at the screen. I can't see it. And I already know what it is, and I can't see it on the screen.
Okay, so let me help you here.
Oh, zoom in. There you go.
Enlargement. Okay. Now look around here at the barbed wire. Does anyone see the secret message starting with?
Someone says no pillar of salt.
Okay.
Andrea can't see it. No pillar of salt. I don't know what that means.
This, I'll give you a hint to see if any of the audience can figure it out. This word is we, W-E. Here's the W, and here's the E. We.
We got the we.
And it goes this way. There's a secret message. And it comes
So someone's
around.
chatting on our website. We are here because. So Michael Morton can see we are here.
Yes,
because
that's good.
Question
Keep
mark.
on.
Very good.
Yes.
Someone else says all new. We're here.
We are here because, you see the word because?
He says because. He wrote because. And just as all new we're here. No, not all new. So
Yes.
Michael's right. We are here because.
We are here.
And then it goes down sideways. They don't see the sideways.
Okay. Let me Photoshop it a little bit and make it easier for you to see. Now, there's also another message right here above 1st March 1941. In that barbed wire, there's a message. There's a message in the sheep here. Does anyone see the message in the sheep? And there's another message over here. So let me show you with some photoshopping. We are here because we are here. And above Hay, 1st March 1941, it says HMC Dunera, the name of the ship. And above manager, right here in that barbed wire, it says Liverpool to Hay. So Liverpool to Hay is right here. And Dunera, the name of the ship, is right there. And we are here because we are here. And so, inside the sheep, Eppenstein, that was the camp commander for the Jews, like the head guy for the Jews, helping them get things in order. So
Dr. Dower, there's an excellent question that just came in on Facebook. I never thought of this. How come that wasn't written in German, that message? These are German Jews.
Because they were in Australia and they didn't speak German in Australia.
But okay, did they speak English coming from Germany? Did they speak
They were
English?
all speaking English at the camp because the guards were English, only English speaking. They weren't German speaking, the guards. And they were in the town of Hay and in the camp, and they decided to print it in English because the Australian guards wouldn't understand the German. So even the guards knew of this secret message.
Oh, the guards saw it.
That's
So
why
who
when
was
the
the secret from?
detectives came from Sydney to confiscate them, they hid them away. Now,
Judy, that's an excellent question, Judy. But so
Yeah,
who were
but
they
you're
hiding the
right.
message from?
here's an actual note.
Oh, here we go.
This is a 2 shilling note. This is an actual note from my collection, our collection, I should say. And it's in a holder. It's PMG, paper money guarantee. It's like a certificate of authenticity, like you'd get a GIA certificate on a diamond. And you see it's from the Joanne Dower collection, if you notice the name right there. That's the back of it. And here is I happen to have here the 6-pence note also, in gem uncirculated. Now this is actually brand new, never folded, never bent, uncirculated condition. And these are very, very scarce, especially in this grade. Also from the Joanne Dower collection. So what happens here is the notes get confiscated, and then they end up using these. So Australian Defence Canteens, Eastern Command. So they make coupons for them to use. This would be 1 penny, 2 penny, 3 penny, 4 penny. So they end up with these coupons to use. And
Dr. Dower, another question.
Yes.
So another great question from Judy. So what was the value of these? You're saying 3 pence, 1 pence. What was their value? They didn't have any money to back up or any silver or gold to back up the value of the currency.
Well, that was the equivalent of they were using the British pound as their unit of currency. So 1 pound was 20 shillings, basically. And this would be like 1D would be about 1 penny cash value. And a British pound back then was probably around $2 or $3 US. So that would be 1 penny Australian, maybe it would be 2 or 3 cents US equivalent pennies.
So how did you earn money? How would a person make money in the camp?
I don't know how they would earn money in the camp. That part I don't know. But so what happened now, next step is that Pearl Harbor, December 1941, Pearl Harbor occurs, and Winston Churchill realizes, after he saw what Roosevelt did to the Japanese Americans, put them in internment camps, that they made the mistake and they should never have sent them over there. So it was in 1941, Pearl Harbor. So right after that, early 42, the Great Britain made an offer to repatriate them. They said you could come back to the UK if you joined the military and you'd have amnesty like nothing ever happened. Or you could join the Australian military and then be able to be an Australian citizen. So 1,000 of the Jews decided to stay in Australia, and about 500 to 1,000 went back to the UK, and the rest were moved to another camp in Tatura, which is in Victoria, about 150 miles north of Melbourne. So Hay was actually dismantled and taken down, and all that's left of it today is the railroad station building here and one railroad car, which is a museum for Dunera. Now they call them the Dunera Boys. They had reunions on a regular basis. It was a big part of the Australian Jewish population. The last reunion they had was in 2010 in Sydney. And they estimate there's probably about 50 that still survive today. So that may be still alive. And that is the story of the Hay internment camp. Now, being a radiologist, this is what happens when radiologists take a selfie, right? So we get together for coffee and we take a selfie, and this is what it looks like. It's a radiology selfie. So what I wanted to do is give you a brief introduction into the history of the internment camps for the Jewish refugees in Australia, which most people are not aware of, and how they then contributed to the development of in addition to the Jewish population in Australia.
Wow. So, okay, let me ask you a few questions. So, first of all, after the war is over, these Jews, you were telling me before they ended up joining the army, like, how do they end up rebuilding their lives? Obviously, they were blessed to survive the war, but what happened afterwards?
Well, most of these Jews,
you can stop sharing your screen, by the way, and then people will be able to see your face better if you want.
They were very well educated now. You're talking about PhDs, artists, professors at universities. They had no trouble getting a job. I mean, if you had someone with a doctorate in history or the sciences, there were many scientists there. They had no trouble getting a job. They were mostly well educated. These were not just grade school dropouts. So they had no trouble getting jobs in Australia or in England.
Okay, so someone else asked a question, Dr. Dower. How come no women were sent to this internment camp?
Well, they didn't feel that the women would be a threat initially, right after Dunkirk in 1940. And because also of the crowded conditions on the troop ship Dunera, they did not want to have women and children in there because the conditions were so tough. So they didn't have any women and children, although later on some, did make it over. They were able to join their families.
So after the war, these Jewish men that were in Australia, they didn't have any Jewish women around.
Not at the camp, correct, and not on the ship.
Interesting. Okay, so they end up, you were telling me before, they went to the army, to the Australian army?
About 1,000 of them joined the army in 1942, and then they were released from the camp. And they had full rights to be Australian citizens and stay in the country. So they were granted citizenship after the war and able to stay there. About 500 plus or minus went back to England, and then the rest decided not to go in the military, stayed in the camp, and were released after the war was over. But most of them were able to get out in 1942. Sigmund Freud's grandson was one of those that was released, joined the Australian Army, and he went into the Air Corps, and he actually was on a very famous mission to bomb a German military base, and he actually saw action.
Very interesting. Okay, so what?
Grandson.
That's interesting. I was reading about the Dunera boys. So they get together, like they have their get-togethers. Have you ever met with these Dunera boys?
No, I've never met them. But for those of you who would like to see more about this, there are some interesting videos on YouTube. So just go ahead and Google Dunera boys or HMT Dunera. And the Australian Museum, the National Museum, also had an exhibit in 2010, which coincided with their last reunion, their last formal reunion, which was their 70th reunion, was in the year 2010. And there's also a Jewish museum in Australia. You can access their website, and they have an exhibit about the Hay internment camps, and you can read more about it. I myself have never been to Hay, even though Joanne and I have been to Australia many times. Like I said, it's an all-day car ride from Sydney, and there's really nothing there but the railroad car, which is their museum. But maybe eventually I'll get over there. But I don't think they even have the train running there anymore. It's just by automobile.
Interesting. So let me ask you a question. The reason how you even discovered this Hay internment camp is because you're very into the Australian currency. Is that correct?
Yes, that's how I found out about it myself.
Correct. Because again, I have your book in front of me, this fascinating book on the Australian currency, and you have tons and tons of pictures of Australian currency and every area of the history of Australia and how it impacted. You actually have the very first note. I'm just looking for it right now. The very, very first note printed, the 00001 of I think like one of the
1913.
Is it 1913? I'm looking at a 10 shilling note. So you have some of the most fascinating pieces of currency here. So what got you involved in currency in the beginning? How did you even come here? I found it right here. The 1913. I mean, I can't share on my screen. I won't see it. But it's fascinating. It's serial number M00000001, the
Now
holy grail of Australian banknotes.
that note is not ours, was not in our collection, but I was able to borrow the photograph of it to use it in the
So how did you tell us? Because how did you get involved in this collecting currencies to begin with?
well, I started collecting stamps when I was 4 years old. And
4.
when I was 21, I started collecting U.S. currency. U.S. stamps when I was 4, U.S. currency when I was 21. And then I started expanding into U.S. currency first, and then Canadian, and let's go into kind of British Commonwealth, because when Joanne and I got married in 1982, we went to Sydney, Australia for our honeymoon. And that was our first time there. And I said, let's start collecting Australian currency. And the nice thing about it is, see, when a wife and a husband have similar hobbies, it makes it easier. So she liked the currency too. So she was all in favor of collecting the banknotes. And I went into a coin shop in 1982 and said, anyone here have currency for sale? Oh, no one collects the Australian currency. We came back 2 years later, and finally there was one dealer that used to be an architect who was our co-author of the book, John. And we met with him, and he said, he's got a lot of notes, but there aren't any collectors. And that's how we got started back in 1984 when we got our first ones. And then now we collect the entire British Commonwealth. So anything
Everything.
Queen or King was on or is on the currency. So Bermuda, Barbados, Bahamas, all part of the Commonwealth, even though they're independent.
So someone commented there's actually a movie on Amazon about this, about the Hay Internment Camp. Did you know that?
Yes, I would strongly urge anyone of interest now to go to Amazon, watch the movie, go to YouTube. There was a lecture that was done in 2015 by a historian retired from the university system in Sydney about the HMT Dinair and the internment camp. It was a very good lecture, but the only problem is because of his age, he was 86 at the time, he sat down and read the whole speech. So he was just reading. But, you know, if you can sit through someone reading from a script, it's interesting. That's on YouTube also.
Okay, so Judy asked another very good question. I don't know the answer. It's interesting. How large was the Jewish community in Australia at the time, before this influx of refugees or prisoners rather came? How large was the Jewish community?
Yeah, I don't know how large it was, but it was large enough to have what they called the Great Temple. So it's in downtown Sydney. You passed by it many times. You never had a chance to go in. You can go in on Friday night or Saturday if you're Jewish. We didn't go in, but it was there before the war, and so it had to be a substantial number, but I can't tell you how many or how many there are today.
Okay, so now what's the most exciting currency, the most exciting currency that you've collected at? So it's like a real exciting thing to find.
Well, anything that's rare or unique that can take a generation to find.
But is there anything specific that like has a fascinating story that like is like the crown jewel of your collection?
Well, there were a lot of notes that we had that we sold. We still have some notes, but we've over the years we tend to buy and sell notes and break up the collection. One recent addition that was very, very unusual was the largest face value note ever printed by the British Empire. So the East African Currency Board was the British currency issuing authority when they were under British control for Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, and Zanzibar in Somalia. For one time, all under East Africa under British control. And 1921, there was a 10,000 shilling banknote issued, which is 500 pounds, which in US dollar equivalent at the time with the exchange rate was $2,100 US in Africa. Can you imagine that? So that was the largest banknote ever printed in the British Empire. And it had King George V pictured on it, 1921. That was a very, very interesting note.
Very interesting. Very, very interesting. And is there anything that you're looking to get? Like, what's the one item that you wish you were able to get your hands on, but you haven't been able to get yet? Anything
Oh,
specific?
um, King George the Fifth 5 pound and 20 pound note from Fiji from 1935.
You're breaking up there. I didn't hear you say it again.
5 pound note and
Oh,
20 pound note from Fiji, 1935, with George the Fifth pictured on it.
wow.
I have the
Wow.
10, not the 5 or the 20.
Okay, I'm gonna ask you another question. Before that, I want to say again that this book is available. The last 2 nights I've been reading this book. It's very, very interesting and very well done. It's available at Chabad. Just message me or text me or send an email to rabbi at mychabadcenter.org. Again, rabbi at mychabadcenter.org. And I'll make sure to get you a book that Dr. Dower is very kindly donating to the synagogue. In this book that I haven't finished it yet, but I'm going to because it's very well done. What is the most interesting thing, not regarding the Hay internment camp particularly, what do you think is the most interesting thing in all of Australian history that you discovered making this book?
Well, that's a very tough question, but it's interesting that Australia started out as a penal colony. So when they first landed there, it was meant as a place to put the prisoners from Great Britain. So, and they were in the original settlement was right by Sydney Harbor called the Rocks. And we also tell the story about that in the book in the early settlement with Captain Phillips. It was actually explored by Captain Cook, but it was explored and settled with Captain Phillips and the prisoners. So that was very interesting. And there are a lot of the very well-to-do prisoners from England that came over and were very successful in Great Britain. I also was able to read a lot about their scientists and their explorers, especially on the notes from 1980. If you look at the $50 bill from 1984 in there, it has like 50 different things with the scientists, what they discovered. It has the
I'm
$100.
going to 50.
Go out to the 50, 1984. You see that?
Yes, 1988, 19.
The $50 bill.
Yes.
You can see there's like 50 different symbols on there, and they explain every one of those scientific achievements.
Wow. And for you being a scientist and a researcher, that's very, very interesting. Do you mind sharing with us for a minute what you've done in the medical field? I remember when I was in your museum, you were showing me something that you invented that you helped make with.
I work with the electron microscope, so I have the scanning electron microscope laboratory, and one of the things we do is tissue engineering. So I help develop the scaffold, or basically support structure, for islet cell implants for type 1 diabetes, an early research project. We've done a lot of other things and looked at artificial valves and ventricular assist devices and all sorts of stuff. I'm actually very much involved with concrete. Because
with what?
Concrete. I have quite a few publications on concrete. And you say, what does a physician have to do with concrete? Well, being in the College of Engineering, I wanted to be sure that we were multidisciplinary in our laboratory so we could involve other areas of engineering. And the University of Miami was a pioneer in developing concrete that can be made to be reinforced with fiber polymers rather than steel rebar. And this has implications for the Middle East. So picture right now in South Florida, when you pour concrete, you use the steel to reinforce it for strength. What happens to the steel in South Florida with the humidity and the salt water? It ultimately corrodes, and it has a limited lifespan. And it's also very expensive and very heavy. So what they've developed now, and I've done some of this electron microscope analysis of it, is use fiber polymers instead of steel rebar for the reinforcement. And we've even done studies with Kevlar, which they use in bulletproof vests. So Kevlar fibers to reinforce the concrete. So now that you don't need steel, guess what? You can make concrete with seawater. It doesn't have to be fresh water. And where's that impacting? The Middle East. Imagine in the Negev desert being able to build just take your water from the ocean. You don't have to have fresh water to build your concrete structures. So that's a big impact in many areas. In South Florida for corrosion proof and strength, lighter weight, and in the Middle East or other areas where there's a shortage of water.
That's very interesting. As I said at the beginning of tonight's lecture, you are a fascinating person with your hand in so many different areas of expertise. Let me end with a last question. This is an important question. And then we'll say thank you and good night. Important question. There's a very famous saying, and there's a true saying, that those who don't learn history are doomed to repeat it, or condemned to repeat it, something like that. So this is a part of history, a small part of the history that many of us, myself included, didn't even know. But what do you think is the lesson for us? So watching this tonight, hearing about the Hay internment camp and the Jews that were taken from England to Australia under these suspicions of being German spies or pro-Nazi, what lesson from history do you think we should be taking from this history story?
The lesson is the people let it happen to themselves. No one cared. No one stopped it. So that's the same lesson we should use today. Look what's going on in this country. We have to stand up for what we believe in. But you notice one thing I don't do is I don't get involved with any political statements. So it's not about being liberal or conservative. I'm neutral when I make my presentations, but I just want everyone to be aware of what is happening and what is the right thing to do for our country.
Perfect. No, it's very important, because that's one of the greatest lessons that we've learned. People were taken away, concentration camps, internment camps, and everyone was quiet. Yes.
Learn from history. One thing I would like to find out, and I have a hard time getting the exact number, but I wonder how many Jews in 1933 voted for Hitler in 1933. It's hard to find an exact number. So these are things we can learn from history.
Yes. Listen, Dr. Dow, I want to thank you. As I said before, you are fascinating. And every time I talk to you, it's just like you're a wealth of information. There's so many other things that I don't know if we're going to talk about, so I'm not going to bring them up, but that I know of your passion for acquiring information and getting involved, and not just acquiring information, but acquiring the historical parts of that information. That it's an honor to get to know you and to interact with you and to learn from you. Rabbis also need to learn from many, many people, and you truly have a lot to share and a lot to teach. Maybe we'll do another lecture together on American history. I know you have another book on American history and American currency, so maybe we'll do that another day. This was very interesting. We've had a lot of viewers, actually. I know you to the viewership. A lot of viewers are watching. I normally keep track on Facebook as my classes go up and down, and if I'm getting more boring, less. You've been doing very good tonight. Thank you. And again, if anyone's interested in the book, please just send me a message or send me an email, rabbi@mychabadcenter.org. And Dr. Dower, thank you. Thank you very much.
All the money for the books go to the temple. I don't take any of it. So please help the temple out, support them. They make great gifts. Give them to your friends, family, and spread them around. Thank you.
Thank you. God bless you. And your wife, Joan, who I know is still watching, and everyone else that's watching, thank you. You have a lot of nachas from all. Another night we'll talk about how many kids. You have 6 kids. So it's almost like a Chabad rabbi, you know?
6 kids, but that's how many I have with Joanne. How many do you think I had with my first wife?
How many?
You have 6 together. How many do you think I had with my first wife?
I don't know. I'm afraid to guess. Another 3.
6. How many
6.
does Joanne have with her first husband?
Wow. Wow.
How many
Wow.
does
Wow.
Joanne have with her first husband?
6.
She has 6 with her first husband also.
Wow.
So how many do we have together?
18.
No.
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 You're 6. It's only your first husband.
That's
6.
the first wife, and I'm the first husband. Okay. You owe me one now.
You got me for a second there.
Okay.
Okay, very good. Very, very good.
Okay.
Thank you very, very much. God bless you. God bless you both. You should remain happily married for many, many healthy, happy years. And God willing, next Thursday night, we have a very interesting lecture planned. I didn't confirm it, so I'm not going to announce it yet, but stay tuned for also another Coral Springs resident who's very fascinating. And we'll be in touch. Thank you.
Thanks to Joanne. I couldn't do it without her.
That's for sure. And everyone,
you.
thank you, all those that are watching, and thank you for all the positive comments. Thank you, and good night.
Good night.